Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
Happy Thorsday to all who celebrate. Thor Nystrom from Matthew Berry's FantasyLife.com. And I have a feeling we're going to talk about the starting quarterback. By the way, this is the first time that we wake up and JJ McCarthy is officially listed as the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings because they had to put a depth chart out yesterday for the first preseason game. They finally admitted what they've been looking to admit for a year and a half. So we'll get into Thor was out there for the night practice earlier this week. He's been doing his own recon throughout the week. There was a third down period. Judd's camp notes will guide us through that. So all kinds of stuff to get to here. Shout out to MSP Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning for keeping us hopefully air conditioned the next couple days, Judd.
Yeah, I was going to say, we got a little reprieve from the heat of late, but today it is back, and it is back with a vengeance, and that means that you need to make sure that your AC is running smoothly. And if there's any questions about it, and I don't mean it's not working at all, I mean if it's not going at 100% full strength, top of the depth chart AC, MSP can come to your house, $49 for a tune-up. Also, the Total Comfort Club, don't forget about that, because that allows you to know that your plumbing, heating, and air systems are taken care of all year long. Just go to, on the website, callmsp.com or give them a call, 651-615-4292. Callmsp.com. That is where your start to comfort for your home begins. Callmsp.com.
Judd's camp notes. So I think we should start with Judd's JJ McCarthy related observations from yesterday's practice, and then Thor, who was out there earlier this week. You guys can kind of take it and run with it. Is that cool with everyone?
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do this.
Let's go. I've got a couple of periods that I want to talk about, beginning with period 7, which was a move the ball drill, which you don't see a ton of from the offense's 35-yard line. Not a great finish, but I want to talk about the start. The start was very encouraging. So, 1st and 10 at the 35 of the offense. JJ McCarthy under center, handoff, Aaron Jones. It gains 4 yards. So now it's 2nd and 6 at the offense's 39. And I'm going to turn my camp notes around here because you're going to see some highlighted plays. This play got a highlight.
I love the highlights.
This play got a highlight.
How do you determine what rises to the level of a highlighted play?
You're about to find out.
Is it just years of instincts or?
Well, no, I don't do it on the fly. I do it once I get home.
Okay, so you let it kind of marinate.
I mentally check mark plays.
I was going to say, how do you remember?
And then, how do I remember?
Well, he's got them all written down.
I've got them all written down, and then I just go back
that triggers
through my notes. And plus, the biggest plays stand out. Like I will put a little check mark by, that was a play worth highlighting once I get home. And then once I get home, I pull this out because it's in my desk, and I start highlighting like a very excited highlighter. Okay, so let's get to it. Offensive 39-yard line.
Camp notes.
2nd and 6, under center again. JJ McCarthy drops back to pass. Right sideline, Jordan Addison, who's pretty well covered at this time, but there's a couple of things at work here. This play, deep down the right sideline, goes for a 35-yard gain into the defense's territory. Now, nice pass, nice play by McCarthy, but I think more importantly, one of the best protections that we have seen from the offensive line in training camp. Protection held up here.
Who was how many of the 5 starters were out there for this?
Darisaw was out there at left tackle.
Okay.
Donovan Jackson at left guard. Now, Michael Juergens was at center because Ryan Kelly did not take part in team or 7-on-7 yesterday because of the elbow. Hopefully back on Thursday. Will Fries at right guard, Brian O'Neill at right tackle, and as I recall, O'Neill threw the key block. But anyway, the play goes for 35 yards, and now it's at the defense's 31-yard line. It eventually gets to approximately the defense's 9. So now we're red zone territory, and this is where it sort of comes apart a bit, okay? McCarthy drops back to pass again, looks for Addison on what I would say is a 5-yard pass over the middle, right into the middle of the field. And unfortunately for him, Blake Cashman steps in front of the ball, sort of wrestles it away from Jordan, and it's picked off. But that was sort of the good and the bad in one series. Move the ball drill. And then unfortunately, so the offense, because it's practice, keeps going, and the next play was a flag. I think it was a false start, which we saw, and Thor saw this on Monday too. With Juergens at center, we've seen a few more jumps. But anyway, the pass to Jordan was a very nice pass, very good play, the exact type of play that you want to see. The pick wasn't great. The red zone is probably the toughest place, we've talked about this all training camp, to operate. So that's Judd's camp note 1 on a drill that I thought was worth taking notes on and highlighting.
Wow. Thor, what mix in some of your observations from you? You were out there on Monday night. I mean, you've been obviously watching film of McCarthy now for a year and a half. What are some of the things that you've gleaned this week?
Well, on Monday, Judd and I were laughing about this up in the press box. We were hoping we got more scrimmage-like conditions, more of the 11-on-11, 7-on-7. Like half of the thing was just positional drills, and then, they finally started showing some stuff. But I think the kid's doing well. You look on Twitter, he gets nitpicked, and then, one interception in a session, and all of a sudden that's what everyone is talking about, etc. The coaching staff is not taking it easy on JJ McCarthy. Flores is throwing the kitchen sink at him when they're in the 11-on-11s. And I think Kevin O'Connell sometimes deliberately puts JJ McCarthy in play situations in practice where he knows the first option is going to be taken away, but JJ doesn't. And then to see what happens. I was told an anecdote from practice on Monday night where O'Connell gives JJ the play, and then O'Connell told the fake ref in the back of the end zone, like the play's like it's coming to you, kind of whispered it to him, and the rest like, okay. And then the concept was supposed to go right, and Van Ginkel almost jumped it. It was one of those passes, and Van Ginkel seen it, and JJ pulled it back and then ran right to where that ref was. And it was an interesting anecdote that sort of spoke to. O'Connell knew what the defensive play call was as well. He knew that the play he called wasn't going to work. Let's see what the kid does, basically. And I think, for people out there that are, oh, he threw this on this play or threw that. You don't know what's going on in the play calling situations, even those 11-on-11s or 7s-on-7s. We saw some of the situational stuff on Monday night when I was there with Judd, but Judd sees this in practice every single day. They're practicing situations. Sometimes the situation is we're deliberately going to put this kid in water up to his nose and see if he can escape. And he has been.
Yeah. In fact, O'Connell talked about this in his press conference a couple of days ago. I think it was the Monday press conference. He talked about exactly that, which was a practice, I think it was from Saturday, where they set up the play where it gave McCarthy options. And they thought what McCarthy might do is what he did. And it wasn't the right thing, but it allowed them to correct it. And that was the coverage dropped. So I think there were 3 rushers. And what McCarthy did is he went out the backside of the pocket and Grenard chased him down. And that's where, and you see this constantly now, after a play that McCarthy makes, O'Connell will come up to him. And what he ordinarily asks is, what did you see and what were you thinking? And McCarthy's immediate response was, I shouldn't have gone that way. He knew exactly what he should have done. So yeah, there's 2 things to keep in mind in watching practice. And I have not seen a snap from the Bears camp, but dare I say, Caleb Williams' atrocious camp might be sort of in the same thing. 1, you're set up to fail at times, but 2, more importantly, is this. And I probably did a lousy job of trying to ask O'Connell this question last week, but my point to him was this. The run game itself, which I expect to be an important part of what the Vikings are going to do from McCarthy and the running backs, the run game itself in practice, in like team drills, isn't very effective. Like the guy gets the ball, he runs the ball, he gets thudded, right? And that's the end of the play. When you see a pass play, it's a pass play. So it could get picked off. It could get caught. There's no tackling, but the play itself is allowed to go through. The run is, hey, I get to the line of scrimmage, I make my cut. The coaches see what they want to see, but it's not dissected by fans. Like, you never hear Aaron Jones is having a phenomenal training camp, or Aaron Jones, did you see he went through the A gap and he should have gone through the C gap? So there's a lot of things as we sort of pick these quarterbacks apart to keep in mind about they are far more on display than any other position is.
JJ McCarthy, coming out of high school, he's a dual threat quarterback and really, really good out of structure type prospect. He chose to go and play for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, the NFL coach in a pro style offensive system where you must play within structure. And that is what he was taught. That's what Jim Harbaugh taught him there. I thought it was really interesting, the decision of JJ McCarthy to go to Michigan, but we saw that he could learn that aspect of the game. This stuff that we're talking about, this stuff of taking away his first option, taking away his second option, just seeing what he'll do in order to get a coaching moment like Judd's talking about, where O'Connell can. What were you thinking on that play? Because the script, the play as written, when the first couple options are taken away, that's where we need to manufacture an answer from nowhere. Right? That's not what the play was called. Those options were taken away by the defense. So now we're going to draw it up in the sand as we go, right? As the play is going. That is what McCarthy is special at. Out of the box, I'm talking about. Before college, nobody taught him that. This is his special talent. But, O'Connell, with NFL conditions here, you're trying to teach the kid and also to learn better his thought process of when those bullets are flying, and you're sort of freelancing in the moment. You're coming up with the answer. What did you see? What were you thinking when you saw it? And why did you choose this? And if I saw something different, maybe in that sort of chaotic moment, maybe did you think about this? We're just going to get him better and better at decision-making when he is out of structure, the thing he's already special at.
If I could zoom out here for a second and get your thoughts and start with Thor on this. I'm trying to think back the last 15, 20 years of the draft process. If there's been a wider gap between how fans, media, and even like the mock draft community early in the process has viewed a quarterback. Prominent members of the media, by the way. I mean, we can get to the Cowherd, Rossini stuff. That's I feel like every week we got to get Thor's thoughts on what national media is saying. But before, like in the early part of the draft process, it was, he's a handoff merchant who might be a second round pick. And you were the first one to come out and say, actually, as one of the foremost draft expert authorities that pays close attention, by the end of this process, he'll be much closer to a top 5 pick than a second round pick. And you were right about that. So like that perception with what NFL teams and the Vikings actually think of him, because the Vikings weren't the only team that would have potentially drafted him 10th. Like the NFL market had him positioned as, it wasn't like they reached out of nowhere. Other teams were considering him as a top 10 pick too. And the Vikings, with a 14-win team and a ready-made playoff roster, are turning the keys over to him, not to be a finished product right away, but like they trust him enough. Can you think of a quarterback where public and media perception was this over here negatively, but the league and a team was like, no, actually, we view it completely different? Oh, we may have lost Thor.
Oh, I can see the past 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you got me? I can think of two in the past. Yeah, 2 in the past 10 years. Patrick Mahomes was one, another quarterback who went 10th overall and didn't play in his rookie season. Obviously took over for Alex Smith in the second year. But the thing with Pat Mahomes coming out of Texas Tech was like, he's a product of the air raid and he throws it downfield too much and you'll never get him to play disciplined quarterback play. He's too YOLO. He's too swashbuckling. So that was the thing with Mahomes. And there was a lot of, obviously Andy Reid was like, no, I'm right and you're wrong. There's a lot of people that didn't believe in that one. Then the other one, I believe it was the next year, was when the Bills took Josh Allen. Josh Allen at Wyoming, he had all the physical tools. They were clear as day, but sometimes the passes, sometimes there was a little Nuke LaLoosh going on. There'd be a ball hit someone on the sideline. And the Buffalo Bills needed to work on Josh Allen's mechanics, but there was a lot of arguing there. The media thought Josh Allen was a second round guy, and the Bills and some other teams obviously thought he was top 10. And the referendum didn't come in on that one till year two, or even into year 3 on Josh Allen. But those are two guys where there was a lot of chatter on both sides.
I think, too, in trying to put the whole picture of what we're going to see from McCarthy together, especially this season, because there obviously will be maturation throughout the season and throughout his career, Thor, is one thing that we saw on Monday, which I don't think I've seen before, but it was the periods, and it was clearly orchestrated because all the quarterbacks did it. It was the periods in which the quarterbacks were allowed to or encouraged to or scripted to take off. And I asked McCarthy about that yesterday because, I mean, here's a kid coming off a meniscus injury that kept him out an entire season. We knew he was athletic before, but I mean, that definitely could sort of make you think twice. And I said, in seeing you on Monday, how much is that an indication of the fact that you are going to run? And he flat out said, absolutely. He said, that's part of my game. I said something along the lines of, to be a successful quarterback today, you really need to be able to do that. And he talked about that. And look, like in training camp practice, when he's pressured, and he's been pressured, like the defensive line gets a push here, baby. JJ McCarthy will take off at times, but again, it's meaningless because he just takes off and then he stops and that's the end of the play. But, there's a lot of components we aren't seeing right now because you just don't. And I don't think you're going to see them on Saturday. I think you're going to see them in week 1. A lot of components to this kid's game that might eventually change. But I think they're going to be different weapons that we're not taking account for if we just go, if Judd's camp notes is just a day-to-day JJ McCarthy's passing and here's what I saw and this is his game. Well, it goes beyond that. So there's elements to his game that you're familiar with and Michigan fans are, Thor. But I think that Vikings fans are going to start to see in week 1 in the Monday night game against the Bears.
Yeah, the scrambling and the out of structure stuff. It's the funnest aspect of McCarthy's game, and you're not going to see the full flowering out of that in training camp just because of the way that it works. But yeah, like when Vikings fans see that, it's like I hate to evoke it, but Fran Tarkenton's the guy that it's going to remind Vikings fans of. It's the same sort of thing where it is impossible to pen the guy in the pocket, and the really cool, like we've talked about since that spring 2024. The really cool thing about McCarthy's game is he is so good within structure. Thing we saw at Michigan, 10 to 19 yards down the field, in between the hashes, he was the best quarterback in the country. But then when you take away the in structure stuff, and then he has to start creating, that's when it gets really special with him. And I think it's really cool the way that the Viking coaches are working on that aspect of his game with them, because there's so much of it that's just kinetic. And natural and like thinking through how to coach that aspect up anyway, I think is really interesting, and it looks like they're doing that.
So just back to Judd's camp notes here. Judd's camp notes. So on that game this weekend here, Saturday, the first preseason game, it's a preseason game, but for it sounds like JJ McCarthy feels like there's a level of importance to this that goes beyond just like checking a box, because this is the first actual football game that he's going to play in since the meniscus injury. So what did you learn just when he was speaking to media yesterday, Judd, about what we can expect on Saturday and just the level of importance of a generally meaningless preseason game? Yeah,
I don't know that the experience of the game itself is like huge. I do think the experience of being on the football field in a competitive game against a team in a different jersey for the first time since the Raiders game in which he got hurt is enormous. And I originally predicted, I think I said originally I didn't think that he would necessarily play in the preseason, but I didn't take into account that fact. Like, you don't want his first game to be a regular season game in Chicago against the team that he grew up a fan of in his hometown. I think the importance of, if he gets 1 or 2 series, I don't think he'd get more than 2, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's 1. But I think the importance for him is just going to be checking off that box of, okay, I've made another step, hopefully come away completely healthy this time. But, it's all going to be, I think, a gradual build-up. There are definite, practice for sure, and Saturday's game, which I would expect to be his only preseason appearance. But, this is a ladder. You rehab, and then you get the setback in November, and you go have the cleanup again or the surgery again. And he's been climbing steps constantly here. And he's an ultra confident kid, but I also think he's a very thoughtful kid. And so I think it's important to him in his brain that he gets through all of these steps to get to the Chicago game in his mind completely prepared to play, Thor.
Yeah, it's going to be a special moment for him. This is a kid who's only played football once in the last year and a half, and obviously got injured in that game against the Raiders last preseason. It's someone who worked himself to the NFL. This was someone who was told all of his life that he was undersized. He was never going to make it as a quarterback, and he built himself into this. I had the occasion this past week to have a 90-minute phone conversation with JJ's private quarterback coach, Greg Holcomb, based out of Chicago. Very, very nice guy. And he was talking to me about how he had started coaching JJ in 7th grade and back, like, nobody thought JJ McCarthy was going to be an NFL quarterback back then. He was just a little guy. He didn't end up having a growth spurt until he got into high school. And that's when Greg Holcomb told Jimmy's father, your son is going to play in the NFL, because he always had the arm strength with it. It's just there was always questions about that. But JJ would keep hearing these things about his frame. It's one of the reasons that the ridiculous narrative about his lack of arm strength, which is untrue to anyone who has ever watched him play football before. But you see the frame, and then, there's some helmet scouting going on with that. But anyway, he had to overcome all this. He had to overcome the perception. He had to do it with the recruiting services, and then he proved it to them. Then he goes up to the college level, and you have to prove it to the college fans. He was stuck behind Cade McNamara, and people, and he had to essentially eject the incumbent quarterback there. Then you get to the NFL. You have earned your slot into the top 10. Then you get injured in your first preseason game. When you're dealing out there, he was slicing and dicing the Raiders. After that first interception, was basically flawless the rest of the time that he was in, and helped the Vikings snap a 10-game preseason losing streak in that game, by the way. And then that night or whatever, the next day, he's starting to have knee soreness. And for the last year, this kid who all he ever wanted to do was play in the NFL, he changed his body. He changed his mind. That was another thing Holcomb told me, is like, he taught himself this mindset, the positive growth mindset, the relentlessness of it. If I fail, I will get back up and I will conquer it the next time out. He taught himself that because he wanted to be an NFL quarterback. And now for the last year, he said, I was the caged animal climbing uphill. But now he got through that year, and the culmination of that, in some ways, is going to be Saturday, and it's going to be the one time we're going to see him this preseason. But no one's going to want to be on a preseason field more than JJ McCarthy on Saturday.
Real quick here, why do you think, we kind of referenced Cowherd recently and in his thoughts, kind of citing people that he's talked to behind the scenes in the NFL for why he has more of a negative opinion about McCarthy, and Rossini, in a clip made the rounds yesterday on social media. It feels, for whatever reason, I don't feel like in the last 18 months, other than maybe like the knee injury, that there's been anything red flaggish other than he's a young quarterback who's super talented, and he's trying to make his way in as a young starter like a bunch of other quarterbacks in the league. And you could debate maybe that's a little risky with a 14-win team. And like, I get that sort of level of discourse, but it almost feels like some of the pessimism surrounding McCarthy goes oddly deeper, or like the way that Colin has sort of phrased, hey, I've got some people that I trust, that they are pumping his tires in a way that is not genuine. It's almost cryptic in a way. And I just wonder what you make of the most recent round of skepticism and criticism.
It's tough to address people that don't have any exposure to the subject that they want to be experts on. Neither of those two people have ever watched JJ McCarthy play football before, but they love grabbing the microphone and talking about his game, right? And the things Cowherd says are ridiculous, and it's just because he's echoing Greg Cosell's scouting report from last February, last March, which has been soundly addressed by now. People don't believe that anymore. And I've said this a million times. I respect Greg Cosell. I don't know what happened there. And I mean this as respectfully as possible. I don't know if Greg watched the wrong quarterback. I don't know if Greg, that's his perception of Michigan quarterbacks, so he said those things. But the things he was saying about, this guy can't move around the pocket, this guy doesn't have a strong arm. You weren't watching JJ McCarthy, dude. You weren't watching him. So now Cowherd for the last year and a half has just been echoing these points as though Colin was the one guy who was given, up on Mount Pius. He was handed the script of JJ McCarthy's career from the great Greg Cosell. And now anytime anyone contradicts it, the people who are watching JJ McCarthy, the coaches, his teammates, everyone, that they're contradicting the script he was given from Greg Cosell. It's, oh, well, I'm hearing different thing from my source. And I've had a sort of guy I trust for a long, long time. Do I have a bad source? Colin Cowherd's asking this to Diana Rossini. And it's like, where are we going with American media today? Why don't you, I got an idea. Instead of you two recording for the next hour, watch JJ McCarthy play football for an hour before you talk about his game again. You guys are making yourself look stupid.
I actually want to read a chunk from, because Greg Cosell, longtime NFL film breakdown guru. He's been a national analyst on different platforms. And I found he made an appearance, and the audience will love this, on the Ross Tucker football podcast a year and a half ago. And they got together on
Isn't that a coincidence? Wherever Greg Cosell went and guessed it, those guys believe the opposite of what JJ McCarthy is true. Yeah. Maybe the problem isn't JJ McCarthy. Maybe the problem was Greg Cosell.
So I do want to read you a couple clips from a quote that he said a year and a half ago before the Vikings even drafted him, I think. Or maybe it was right after the draft took place. But a shout out to Game Day Men's Health, a new partner here on Purple Daily for the 2025 season. And there was a mean-spirited comment on Feedback Friday last week that said, Mackey's 40, looks like he's 100. That guy's a dinosaur. And so, listen, okay, I've been reflective in my older age now. Energy, mental fog, things that maybe didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. And I'm really happy and fortunate that I have connected with the folks at Game Day Men's Health. Modern men's health care. This is not like a traditional clinic. In fact, when you go in, there's like a lounge. They've got snacks and some, I'm going to say NA beverages. Okay, don't get too excited. And you got, you walk in and, they got sports on TV. But it's where men go to reclaim energy, confidence, and vitality. No judgment, just solutions for whatever it is that you're dealing with. Low testosterone, weight loss solutions, treatment for ED, peptides, advanced lab work. From the moment you walk in, you're greeted with a modern lounge vibe, much different than your traditional clinic. Appointments and lab results are quick. They also utilize FDA-approved therapies. 3 locations in the Twin Cities, Edina, Minnetonka, and Roseville. So check out Game Day Men's Health and take control of your health and your life. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com/Purple Daily. That's GameDayMen'sHealth.com/Purple Daily. If you do stop in, hit them up. Let me know. I want to hear about your experience, and we can compare some notes here. Also, a reminder, we will be Purple Daily and other Score North podcasts at the Minnesota State Fair, August 21st through the 29th. We'll hit a couple of Thorsdays out there. So noon to 3 at the Score North podcast stage, just to the left of the grandstand, across from one of those big Sweet Martha's Cookies barns. But noon to 3, Score North podcast will be live. Purple Daily every day at 1 o'clock. We're looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible. It's been like 6 years since we've done regular daily shows at the fair. So come hang out with us, talk some football. We'll have a microphone and some other fun things in the crowd. Football. All right. Trigger warning for Thor here. This is from Greg Cosell a year and a half ago on the Ross Tucker football podcast. It required a lot of effort for JJ to make throws that were relatively routine. Let's say you're talking about a dig ball at 17 yards. And by the way, he had so many clean pockets because he would literally hitch up 2-3 times. And that's not taught the way that you throw on a dig ball. He had to really work. You could see his whole body getting involved in delivering the football. He needed a firm base to throw the ball, needed everything right to deliver on basic throws. It really stood out on tape. I know that a lot of people have said that his pro day and things that happened since the season, he's got a big arm. He did not show that on tape, and that's all I have. I'm not at the pro day. I'm not doing private workouts. I'm only watching the tape. He was not more of a developmental guy based on the tape, is what Greg Cosell said.
Yeah, again, I don't know what tape Greg Cosell is watching. Throwing his whole body into it. Pal, he had the second fastest max velo throw in NFL Combine history. Were they screwing around with the machine there? Was it like the election?
I saw this in Thor. It was like a Happy Gilmore, running head start is what I saw.
I seriously, I don't know what I don't know what he's talking about. The thing when he brings up, his pocket movement's not good, bro. He's one of the best scrambling quarterbacks we've seen in the last decade. Like I honestly don't know what he's talking about. The quantifiable metrics would help Greg out, I think, a lot. The thing that would help him the most is watch him play. You know, people who, when they watch tape, that they don't need to say over and over again, when I saw the tape. Again, I don't know if Greg watched the wrong guy, or I don't know if he watched JJ McCarthy, but it's one of the two. He did not watch JJ McCarthy at Michigan. He's not describing JJ McCarthy at Michigan. He wasn't that. And before, back, you go spring 2024, the audience more or less had to trust whether, do I trust me or do I trust Greg? Now it's, do I trust Greg or do I literally trust the rest of the world? Greg, Colin Cowherd, and Diana Rossini on one side, Ross Tucker, right? You have the four horsemen over there. And then you got the rest of the world who have actually watched JJ McCarthy play football.
What's weird about it too is if you watch him play, it's not like he's perfect, but they're picking apart the wrong things. That's what I don't understand.
Correct.
Like there are things. I mean, when I asked McCarthy the question about his arm strength, I said, I see things that aren't great, but your arm strength ain't one of them. And he laughed. He's like, yeah. I mean, he knows. It's why O'Connell, I don't know what the world thinks. Is he supposed to be a finished product? Is it being held against him in right now because the Vikings, have assembled an offense that should be a huge part of his potential success? Like, is it almost, well, if he needs all that, he's not good? So it is a very weird thing. And I'm not even here to defend him. He can do that. I just think this is a very odd battle to pick. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks to pick apart. And this just seems to me, and let's see half a season. Like, if it's a mess after 8 games, let's talk about it. No question about it. But it just feels like there's a personal evaluation here. And it's a situation where it's become like, I'm going to stake my career on his failure, which is sort of an odd hill to die on.
Yeah, and let's talk about things in reality from people that know his game. I'll go back to the conversation that I had with Greg Holcomb, his JJ's private quarterback coach, earlier this week. We talked about elements of JJ's game that have improved, that have been worked on, going back to Michigan, but then specifically in the NFL training camp. Things that and a couple of things I think will be interesting to the audience. But one of the things we talked about was the layering throws. Yeah. And Holcomb was talking about how proud he is of JJ, that, that those clubs have been starting to get added to his bag, because you see that stuff. Greg talked about a couple of throws that he had seen where he's like, those are throws where, like, earlier pre-Michigan, you wouldn't see. You'd see the fastballs, but now you're starting to see that. That was one. One for that I think the audience would get a kick out of, because there's been some chatter about the mechanics especially when he throws downfield now, where the right leg will kick out a little bit. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I was asking Greg, because I was like, on that follow through, I was like, there's some people out there that think that that's an issue. There's some people that don't, and I get the question, and I was like, frankly, I don't know how to answer that one. Like, what do you got? And he kind of laughed, and he said, what's so funny? He said, my son, who's Greg's son, who's in, I think, 8th grade, he already has an offer from Michigan and Purdue, a football scholarship. And wow. He said, the funny thing is, he said, my son was like 6'1", 180. And, for his age, has a very good arm. But he goes, my son does the right leg kick. And he said, my son looks up to JJ like an older brother, and he kind of throws it like that too. And Greg kind of chuckled, and he's like, is that the way that I teach it, or is that the way that you would teach it? He goes, no, but he said, at a certain point, you're not going to correct something when you see it over and over again working. Like, if the batter in the box has his hand a little bit lower, you're Tom Amansky, and you go and you see a batter who has his hands a little bit low in the box, but he hits 60 dingers. He's hitting the ball 550 yards into the parking lot or whatever. Tom Amansky's not going to be like, no, you got to do it my way. At a certain point, the mechanics I think that Holcomb cared about, and like that were worked on, that JJ has improved. It's the ones during the throw, the setup before that, and then the ones of the throw. Greg was talking with me about how they have drills where they marry the left eye to the left foot, and then following that around, and then that's how JJ keeps the mechanics on the move really well. They have other drills of making sure that no matter where you are, you're moving around the pocket, that upper body's cocked to throw with the throwing platform under you. It's in part explains why he's gotten so good with that. So a couple ones with, and the one other one that I brought up to him that I've noticed is one valid criticism of JJ's game, very valid. His first year starting as a sophomore, 2022, there was the thing of he'd go to the first read, and then sometimes he'd go to the second read, but a lot of times there'd be the pulling, and then he'd start scrambling a little bit early, a little bit more myopic on his reads. You saw a little bit more forcing of the ball there. He got better with it in 2023, and particularly down the stretch. You started to see him go through the progressions more and more where it was more natural like that. I've noticed in the limited stuff that I've seen, the clips and the practice I saw, that the progressions are getting better and better and better with him. And the one that I talked about Greg with from Monday's practice, and Judd, I don't know if you highlighted this in your notes or not, but the concept started out, it was one of those in 11 on 11. The concept started out, JJ's body was to the left. The first read was to a left guy. I forget who the receiver was over there. It was covered. He then, you get the half contortion to the middle of the field because that's where the second read was. That guy was covered. And very quickly to the right, JJ saw that Addison was in one-on-one coverage. He snaps his head over there and got that ball out so fast. And there was only one dude over there on Addison, but the ball had to be put with the inside leverage, right? Because the cornerback's behind him. You have to lead him towards the sideline and on the inside there so the defensive back can't make a play on it, right on the hands. And that was the third progression on a bang, bang, bang concept across the field. That's impressive stuff. That is NFL quarterback play. And then to make that throw, and Greg talked about how in the drills that they do, how he teaches it, it's like one of those old school sprinklers where it's like,
oh yeah.
That's how they do the progressions. And Greg talked about how he said on a 3-step drop, say out of shotgun, he said, your first read, you need to know whether you're throwing the ball to him or whether you're going to go to the second one when you're at the 1.5 step, basically, right? It's like your right leg back. And then when that left leg is crossing over, but before it's hit the grass, what he teaches his quarterbacks is you need to know right then, are you going there? Because if you're not going there, you can't linger on that guy once you've hit the drop, right? I mean, that's where everything is going to bog down. But if you know that you're not going to throw it to him, then on that drop, you immediately go to the second read, and then we go from there. But JJ's gotten so much better at that. So it's something I want to point out.
By the way, if you're looking for a wild Friday night, just pull up Tommy Mansky, Fred McGriff commercials from the early 90s.
Crime Dog with that blue hat on, and he couldn't like wear the Braves or Padres hat, so he just wore this like blue or black
like a
hat.
Generic blue baseball hat.
Yeah. I'm the Crime Dog, Fred McGriff. On the layering of throws as well, and that is a definite place that JJ needs to make progress, has made progress. He's talked about that as well, though. Part of that, too, is, and he flat out said this, being out of football essentially practices for a year, he's working on that as well. Like that also, he needs to improve there, but it also takes some touch. And he fully admits that he lost some touch. Your arm strength doesn't go away. Your ability to fit the ball in, though, has to come back. So he talked about that. The right leg kick would concern me more if his arm strength was an issue, because then the natural inclination would be you're not planting your feet enough to actually get the zip on the ball. But the zip on the ball is fine. I think one thing we are going to see, though, is when things break down, JJ McCarthy in year one is going to take off. Now, hopefully he slides or gets out of bounds. I do not want him taking hits. But, I mean, if there's going to be a progression between Thor year 1 and year 3, it's probably that. Because when you're at a practice there, especially down low, and I've talked about this before, when you see the pressure coming, this whole read thing, right? Like, just do your reads, 1, 2, 3, right? It's that. Yeah. And so if you're a young quarterback just starting, and the answer to the question is, do you want to be sacked or do you want to get 5 yards? You're going to take the 5 yards, right? Now, by year 3, now you slow the game down yourself. So if Colin Cowherd or Rossini expect on September 8th, right? September 8th in Chicago, this is going to be a finished product, or he is a bust. They're wrong. Like he's not going to be. It's going to take time. This is all a progression. And so I think that's what people like. You got to weigh that. There are busts, but there's also kids that just need some more time. That doesn't take away from his abilities, though.
Can I just add one more layer here too? Because Thor kind of touched on like the mechanics of if you know quickly that you're not going to your first read, how do you, there's a certain level of a certain bar for mechanics and like posture, if you will, and footwork that you need to have to quickly get to in a position to make the throws. That's all, like, if there are little issues here and there, that is all super teachable stuff in the NFL if you're talented enough. It's the processing and the decision making and the other stuff that's a little harder to quantify. How quickly can your mental computer run that file, right? Like within 2.5 seconds. So what I'm looking for is less about the leg whip and different things, and it's more, does he know pre-snap that first read based on that coverage probably isn't there? Boom. And now he's expediting his decision. That's what the great quarterbacks are like. They know pre-snap. Okay, we'll snap it. Probably going to have to get to this over here within about 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds, right? So, and that stuff, we're going to have to get into the regular season to see a lot of that stuff, quite frankly.
Yeah, and Greg mentioned that that's something that JJ has that he has talked about with JJ, and JJ has echoed back to him of the thing in the NFL. It becomes more about the mental side, and how well do you know the concepts? How quickly can you go through them? How quickly can you audible off the initial plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? How quickly do you decipher the defensive coverages and the movement of the defenders and all these different things? Tom Brady, a guy who said that, echoed what Jim Harbaugh said, that JJ McCarthy is the best quarterback in Michigan history on the college field. But Tom Brady's talked a lot about this of that you go to the NFL. He's like, my superpower was just knowing what was going to happen before it did. And the only reason that I could do that was because I studied film like a maniac. Yeah. That's like Tom Brady didn't have a life. He was just like Howard Hughes in his mansion, like watching the on his projector, the next team, watching film over and over and over again. So when he was on the field, he knew based on the alignment, okay, there's only 2 different things the defense does out of this. So and then right after the snap, that beat after, based on the initial movements, all right, they're in this one. So that dude's going to be open, right? Or that, however it goes. You hear a lot of that from the great ones out there. It's the film work and stuff like that the average fan doesn't see, but that becomes much more important in the NFL.
Yeah. Wow, you guys. Well, that was, by the way, looks like we just got an email from Greg Cosell, who just says, I disagree with everything you just said for the last 20 minutes. So.
I would love to give an open invite to Greg Cosell to meet me on Purple Daily or anywhere else whenever he likes for a JJ McCarthy debate. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. Anytime you like, and we can go through that tape. I'll bring some clips.
You tried with Colin. You tried.
I tried. I gave the old college try. But Colin,
you went on with him, and it's like you never appeared with him. It's unbelievable.
Well, he says he has his old sources that he trusts. Apparently, he doesn't trust Thor as much. I think this is going to give Colin an example. Maybe it's time to trust the new guard with football evaluation.
Wow, let's go. By the way, it's almost like there's 2 debates happening at the same time. There's the debate over what did the film show previously leading up to the draft and then into this year. But then the other debate is, will he be a good quarterback in the NFL? And that is to be played out on a football field starting on Saturday, his first game action in a year.
I can't wait. And one other observation just from being there on Monday night was how attached KOC and McCarthy are. And, between the plays and between the sessions, and even after, after the practice was done, KOC gives like his little talk to the team, and then the fans are still waiting there, whatever. Then when he gets done and it disperses, and then people are walking towards the stands and start, signing their autographs, or some run towards their family. I look back, KOC's talking to JJ again, and he's like pointing around and I have no idea at this point what he's teaching him, but he was very animated about blah, 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 blah. It was really cool seeing how closely connected those 2 guys are. And as I said on Twitter, Kevin O'Connell, the track record with the quarterback development, the quarterback evaluation, the quarterback scheming, if you believe in those things of Kevin O'Connell, you by definition believe in JJ McCarthy.
What's weird about it, too, is it feels like in the inherent criticism of McCarthy, some of these people are completely forgetting O'Connell's success with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they're dismissing that as, well, he's going to fail. It's like, okay, what about Sam Darnold? Like, are you telling me Sam Darnold was just going to pop in 2024?
Yeah.
No matter where, like, anyone could have given him a job and all of a sudden he's good. Mm-hmm. Like, the Darnold thing to me was far more, like, if McCarthy is successful, I'll be impressed, don't get me wrong, but you resurrected Darnold's career from the dirt. So it's a very weird thing that O'Connell, it's as if he's not a product here, and it's as if Mike Zimmer is coaching McCarthy.
Yeah, that's right. And also Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins, and you can go back. The entire track. Yeah, Kirk Cousins, who we knew the baseline of his play, and then the next year last year with Atlanta, immediately craters. Yep. You notice that O'Connell's the tide with these guys, right? When they're not around O'Connell, their career has been this, and when they're around O'Connell, their career is like this. It's another aspect that I don't understand about the JJ McCarthy criticism, because you are implicitly criticizing it's KOC as the evaluator and the developer, that you don't believe in those two things. If to this degree you don't believe in JJ McCarthy, what are the odds that O'Connell, the first time it's a handpicked top 10 quarterback, that is my guy. That is the guy that I want to develop, that he is both wrong about that, but then also that he fails over multiple years coaching that guy up and then play calling for him. What are the odds based on what we've seen so far? Take it outside of Thor against Greg Cosell. What are the odds that Kevin O'Connell is going to fail with the top 10 quarterback that he chose and he has been with every day now for 2 years?
Yeah, at worst, it feels like there's going to be a serviceable game manager type quarterback inside of JJ McCarthy if all things fail because of the infrastructure and everything you just said. Sam Darnold as Exhibit A last year. And then the upside that most people are not even really considering, because we didn't really see it at college because he wasn't asked to, is off the chart. So we're up against it here, Thor. Great in-depth discussion. I love that at one point Thor condescendingly called Greg Cosell pal. I think pal ranks very high on the, like, if you're looking to be condescending, pal.
He also said he watched the wrong tape.
You know,
like he also said, I don't know if he watched the wrong tape.
He watched Kate McNamara.
And Greg's not that. And Greg's not a young man, so that's basically inherently implying that he's old and senile and popped the wrong tape in.
Really digging in there, yeah. Really uncalled for. Thor Nystrom.
Greg can come and watch tape with me anytime. I got the projector up there again. Greg, open invitation. You need to see JJ McCarthy play. Your mind is going to be blown when you.
And
see
maybe,
him for the
Greg,
first
maybe
time.
you can schedule it on a Tuesday night. You guys can stay up for some action after, order some pizza. It'll be great.
Open invitation, Greg.
Thor Nystrom from Matthew Berry's FantasyLife.com and Thor KU on Twitter. All right, that's a wrap on Purple Daily here, where we just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. See ya.